All right, well, thank you for coming this morning. Again, we appreciate you being here, and thanks for just your support for Tune and our partners and our customers. So again, thank you. My name is Ryan Buma. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer here at Tune. And it's an exciting topic for me to talk to today, which is the future of the marketing technology stack. And I would like our panelists to introduce themselves, maybe 30 seconds each. Introduce yourself and a little bit about your background and what you do on a daily basis, and a little bit about your company, and then we'll get right into the questions.
Great. Hi everyone, I'm David Spitz. I'm the CMO at mParticle. The company started about 4 years ago as an API for marketers and engineers to get data out of complex app environments and get that data to this emerging class of partners like Tune and others, as well as legacy solutions like Adobe Analytics. In the last year and a half since I joined the company, two things happened, I guess. One is the market has come around, so people like Walmart, JetBlue, NBC have become a lot more interested in mobile, and at the same time, mParticle has added a lot of solutions. So we've added support for web and over the top, and we've become basically a full-service customer data platform.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Aurelie Genet. I work at Trainline as mobile marketing lead. Trainline, if you don't know, world-leading platform for rail. So we do sell train tickets in about 86 operators in 24 markets across Europe. So if you're traveling in Europe, I highly recommend you check it out. I have roughly 10 years experience in the mobile marketing space, started in agency and then moved client-side, explored the gambling world, startups, and now travel at Trainline.
So I'm back again, Miha.
All right.
So yeah, no, I think we explained what we do.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of like pass that question.
Get ready, because you're on the next panel as well. If you didn't know, right?
Good.
All right. So over the last 8 or 10 years, we've seen the creation of what we're calling, or you see the industry calling, marketing clouds or marketing technology stacks. I might say that started maybe, like I said, 8 years ago with Adobe's purchase of Omniture. Some people say no, it was maybe Google's purchase of DoubleClick. We could discuss that. It would be an interesting discussion, but nevertheless, we have seen this growth of the marketing clouds. And I most recently, before joining Tune, actually was in the Oracle Marketing Cloud as an executive, and I helped put together the strategy, the integrations, and all the go-to-market plans for those acquisitions we made, which was 5 in a 4-year period, to actually build out this marketing cloud. And it was interesting, when I first started interviewing at Oracle, I was like, oh, I don't really know that I want to work for a big company like Oracle. But I had a chance to meet with Mark Hurd, the Oracle CEO, and I said, well, Mark, your history is on-premise databases. Your history is on-premise enterprise resource planning systems. You haven't been the leader to the cloud, right? You're a laggard or a follower to the cloud. Like, why do you think that Oracle should buy a bunch of companies and build out a SaaS marketing stack? I asked him earlier, I said, does anybody in your sales organization know a marketer? Have you ever sold to one? And his answer was very clear. He goes, no, we haven't, but we need to, because the marketers are underserved, right? The marketplace is full of point solutions. These point solutions all have some goodness to them. A lot of those companies are very, very small, and big enterprise companies prefer to buy from one vendor, and they they prefer to buy an integrated stack of technology or capabilities. And so it was a really interesting discussion with Mark, because I actually believe in that promise. Right now, we all agree probably that there's a big gap between the promise of a cloud or a stack and what the value it can provide, surely early on. But I think we all also believe that we do want to work with more vendors than less vendors. We want to take the technical sophistication away from the marketer. We need IT to step up in many cases and be more involved. But nevertheless, in a SaaS play, really it's all about the marketer, right? It should be focused on the marketer. It's interesting that we can look at that stack and that cloud and try to understand kind of the history. And what I would like to do is start really with you, Aurelie, and talk about, is that promise of the cloud, is that promise of a marketing stack actually fulfilled for you as an end user, right? Again, we all know there's a gap. I'd like to hear from you firsthand. What is that gap in real terms?
Okay, so I completely agree with what you said. I think the cloud is becoming more sophisticated, bigger. There's more and more apps now that you can integrate, and that's great because it's innovation, and it really allows us as marketers to deliver on the promise, to talk to the right people at the right time with the right message, etc. And what's great is that because there's more apps, there's also more teams internally that want to get involved in choosing the right tools, but each of these teams will have different KPIs, and therefore they'll have different ways to actually select the tools that they want to work with, and that's where it becomes a little bit tricky, because obviously they'll select the tools, but it might not come from the same vendor, and that's where we need tools to actually integrate together and communicate together, and that's what on paper sounds like, yeah, it's just a line of code, just integrate it, it'll be fine. Doesn't really happen like this. So actually for us, something that we look at is actually working with vendors that understand that they're just a piece in the puzzle, and that there is a broader universe, there's an already existing stack that they need to fit within. And we look for partners that are aware of that and work with certified partners, for example, so we know they have this existing relationship with them. So on paper, sounds great. In reality, I think we still have some work to be done.
That's some work to do. Nice. Miha, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, first of all, I do believe in in this kind of like vision that there's going to be big companies just bringing it all together and having a kind of like an ERP, if you want, for marketing. And not only that, I think this system will start kind of talking to each other. I think the philosophy of oracles, if you want, is that they all already have something that needs to plug into marketing. So these things used to be very separated, but with this commerce going online and being really driven by digital and all that kind of stuff. So you don't have to be like super visionary to see how these things connect. So I think they have a really strong advantage in making this thing happen. But obviously, market is also incredibly complex. And now, when you look at the cloud, so each of those clouds they come from one angle, right? So they come from, let's say, a CRM angle, and it makes a ton of sense to connect email, software, and email marketing is a huge thing, and is like so incredibly developed and so sophisticated, and so clouds can do this extremely well today. For instance, and there aren't many companies out there that can really kind of challenge them on that, and so that's why. This is kind of the base, the foundation in marketing, and they're incredibly valuable to big corporations, right? So that's kind of one angle. Then when you look at Adobe, and it's like the web analytics that they got in with Omniture, and then obviously all the creative tools and publishing tools together, and then paired with the DMP. Again, it makes a ton of sense. You want to personalize the sites and so on. So now, when I look this from let's say our perspective, my perspective is much more like advertising. None of those clouds are strong there yet. No. They're trying. They're kind of making attempts. Adobe, acquired Tube Mogul and so on. So the question is how well are those guys going to execute? And right. What's going to be their strategy from here? Are they going to just get more acquisitive and kind of add those pieces? And then the challenge is okay, can you really pull them together into one product? A lot of these products today, they're login pages, and then in the back you have 6, 7, 8 right. products, and it's not necessarily what the marketing says, right? So bottom line, I'd say the direction is right. I think they have a real shot of kind of owning the big chunk of the market. But I think we'll continue to see smaller companies, or even smaller specific clouds, if you want. Yeah. Maybe they'll be more serving the mid-market and long tail, HubSpot is a good example, or some other types of use cases. So I think we'll continue to see that dynamic, and we'll continue to see a lot of innovation among the smaller players, and we'll continue to see the big guys.
Yep. I could jump in. I think the notion of cloud is not that useful to me. It's just hosted software as a service. So I find splitting it into maybe 3 categories. There's sort of the apps. There's these suites that contain multiple apps, and then there's let's say core data infrastructure. And the market has pretty much spoken. It's helpful to think about Gartner surveys 250 large enterprise marketers. And basically, on average, they have 22 of these apps in their stack with 7 more in deployment. So there's a multiplicity of them. And I think those don't even count the mobile apps. So I think actually the number is probably closer to 40 or 50 in the average large enterprise stack.
Wow.
In terms of suites, the majority of large enterprise have at least 2 suites, 2 of the big 5. So let's say Salesforce, Oracle, Adobe, plus IBM. Again, if you count Tune as a suite, the number is probably much larger than that. It's probably like 5. And then in terms of core infrastructure, if you ask a large enterprise, hey, do you guys have a customer data platform? Do you have core infrastructure to string all these things together? Half of them will say yes, which is kind of like your dentist when they say, hey, have you been flossing? And everyone goes, oh yeah, I've been flossing. But the reality is you look at their teeth and they have not been flossing every day. And this is what Gartner says, and this is what our research points out too. Probably it's more like 10% of companies have a serious approach to their core data infrastructure. That's the part of the market that we focus on.
Right, great. That's great insight. I think it's interesting when you dissect, if we were to sit down and dissect each one of the, the bigger marketing clouds, right? We can think about Oracle, we think about maybe Adobe and Salesforce, right? If you dissect it, you'll see that their heritage comes through. And as it guides their future decisions, which I always find very interesting, right? So at Oracle, we did a lot of great stuff, but at the end of the day, it was email. That was the star of the show, right? With Adobe, the star of the show is web, right? They do a lot of great stuff, no question about it, but the star of the show has always been web. With Salesforce, we're not quite sure what they're doing with Marketing Cloud, right? I mean, honestly, they bought some stuff, but they're an SFA company, right? They're Salesforce automation company, and that's their heritage. And so it's interesting that none of these big players have a heritage in mobile. But yet we saw through Mary Meeker, and Peter talked about it yesterday, that mobile is where all the ad spend growth is going to be. So we've got a kind of a chasm here, right? So maybe David, you could start and talk to us about that chasm, and how do you feel about that from a marketing perspective and a mobile perspective specifically, and where do you think that's going to go?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you ask any of them, you say, do you have mobile? They say, yeah, we have mobile. We check the box on mobile. But that question of how do you define that chasm, what's the size and shape of the opportunity, makes all the difference. Yeah. So, for one thing, I was talking to Jenny Wise, who's presenting, I think, a little bit later from Forrester last night. We're talking about mobile is not just another channel. It's the key moment of truth, or at least the majority of moments of truth across any industry is going to be mobile. So it's not just another channel that you can check the box. It's like the most important channel. And actually, the Mary Meeker stats, I did a little bit of back of the envelope calculations. I mean, what she's talking about is the difference between time spent on media and budget spent on media dollars. And there's a $22 billion gap, essentially, between the 25% of time people spend on mobile compared to other medium and the, I guess, 12% of the budget. But the opportunity is so much bigger than that. I mean, we're more interested in there's 3% of transactions, e-commerce transactions that are mobile, but anywhere between 50 and 70% of all commerce transactions are influenced by mobile moments.
That's right.
And so that's a $3 trillion opportunity. If you compare that, 22 billion is the advertising opportunity, 3 trillion is the commercial opportunity. So it's way bigger than anyone realizes, and it's not anyone, everyone in this room understands that, but bigger than other people realize. And then the challenge is, how do you operationalize against that? And it's much harder than most people can understand because, mobile impacts every element of the customer journey. It's technically complex to deploy. It requires, new data schemas, new approaches to identity. So it's going to be very hard for people who are focused on a channel like email to get into the mobile opportunity.
I think that's right. Good. Any thoughts on that, Aurelie?
I think it's exactly the same thing that advertisers have to face. I mean, you have advertisers that were web first, and they're realizing, okay, we kind of need to change and be mobile first. And I think it's just companies take longer to go through that, where customers are already there and waiting. So, similar thing.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Miha?
Yeah, look, I think those guys have very deep pockets, and so they're gonna they're playing the big game. Again, they have assets that are super crucial that the smaller players don't, and they have the luxury of kind of like waiting and seeing like who's going to really take off, and then they can very easily write like one or a couple of checks, right? So I think the big question is here: is anyone among the emerging guys, so powerful that actually can go so fast that before they realize they need to write a check, they would disrupt them, like turn this upside down and actually rule the world? That's kind of like a question. So, and that for me, like from this standpoint, it's hard to see. So I mean, if you compare this to a media analogy, like I don't know, Facebook, 6-7 years ago, not many people would back then like predict that they're going to completely rule the world, right? And they do today. So they went very fast. So when you look at the software landscape and technology landscape, I think it's very hard. It's harder to pull off, I think, than on the media side when when you have the pool of the consumers. Here you need to go company by company and selling enterprise deals. As you know, it's not easy,
Right.
and it takes a lot of time and a lot of money, and operationally it's complex. So again, I see, the current situation is going to continue, I believe, and it's not nothing like terrible. I think we're seeing lots of great innovation, and then the big guys are still going to do a lot. So.
Yeah, and if the current situation continues, 30% of the apps in a marketer stack will be from one of the big five, and
That's right.
that still leaves a lot of room for innovation
That's right.
and a lot of need for integration.
Yeah. And also one thing I'd say, look, when we think about who we go talk to, right? So you got to be a really big advertiser, and so you'll have solutions that are out of the box for if you're like a fairly small marketer, and is a lot of that, right? And you just have 1 or 2 channels, and you push that. So you don't necessarily need all these highly specialized tools. But if you're a super large performance or brand advertiser, and you're like investing hundreds of millions, then obviously the sophistication level is on a different level, and then you have to really assemble the solution that actually fits your business needs and the strategy and everything. And I think that's going to continue to be also kind of like the secret sauce of the best players out there in the market. They're going to go and assemble their own thing, and that's also what gives you the edge, right? So if every single company has exactly the same setup and exactly the same software, then I mean, how are you going to really compete?
Right, and I think that the core statement there, and you alluded to, both of you alluded to earlier, is that any vendor can go out, say one of the big vendors with deep pockets go out and say, hey, we've got this marketing cloud. Well, the reality is the solutions or the capabilities in that cloud are not a perfect fit for any one company, right? It's just an aggregation of the common components that they feel, and hopefully the customers feel, add some value, so the customer themselves don't have to stitch it together, but never is it entirely a specific customer's complete marketing cloud, right? And I think that's important, and it will never be. It will never be, right? So I think that's, to your point of leaving room, there's always a lot of room for us who are innovating in our space to add a lot of value.
I think it's more exciting to be on this side.
I agree. Trust me, so do I. Okay, that's great. Okay, so another question. We all know that there's a growing pressure for the CMO to be measured, right? I mean, we see this, we hear this constantly. Gone are the days where, the big advertising campaign is a Super Bowl ad only, right? Without any measurement, any ROI calculation, return on ad spend calculation. So the measurement is there. And unfortunately, technology providers have not given marketers great tools to measure that. Advertisers have not. Agencies certainly haven't given the tools for marketers to be successful on the measurement side of things. So Miha, maybe you can give us a little bit feedback of how you're seeing that and the transition in the CMOs that you sell to and their desire to be measured, and how your tools and your technologies fit into that.
Yeah. So, again, we're seeing, just a small kind of like chunk in a whole big kind of like CMO world, right? So we are, part of the digital advertising, initiative that they have internally. So, what we are trying to do here, and also in collaboration with you guys, is really to make mobile extremely measurable. All the way from from the beginning. The exposure and what is the content that the user is engaged, and how these actually can be optimized, and then all the way to really like the return on the ad spend, right? So one thing that is very interesting that we have done recently, both on the brand side and the performance side, is incrementality. So that is something that in order to be able to set up incrementality tests and really kind of connect advertising to outcomes, you have to have the lever to really serve things, right? So you got to create the treatment groups and the control groups and do this correctly. And then if you can do those experiments and do them in deterministic way, which means that you have identity for all those users, and if you can really cover enough of the media so that you basically exclude all the other factors, then when you connect this to attribution or any conversion events, could be also like in-store conversions, for instance, which is another great data that can be used. Then you can start running those experiments and seeing like, okay, if we run advertising versus not, like what is really the incremental lift from that spend. And so starts with the media, but for us, what is interesting is creative incrementality, right? Because in order to do creative well, you first need to know what the baseline is, right? You have the baseline, you measure the baseline, and then you start investing in creative. And then that kind of like experiments need to show you, okay, is there any point if you personalize? Is there any point if you use things like location or I mean, there's like just so much data out there that can be used in personalization, and having the ability to measure is key. So that's kind of like the world we live in. Again, it's not like the whole world of the CMO, but we think it's incredibly important given the amount of the money they spent in the media.
You bet.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting to think about the experiment design, I'd say the independent variables that you're adding to the equation with these partnerships, you're being able to, but I think what's most exciting for me right now is almost the dependent variable, is able to optimize things against true, lifetime value.
Sure.
And a lot of this innovation is going to kind of unfold over the next, several months and several years. So in the meantime, what marketers are doing is just trying to collect the most cleanest data that they can, so that when they're training, AI models, or they're hiring up their data sciences team to run these analyses and create these experiments, they have good, clean data sets, historical data sets. Yeah. So I was very excited by what Peter said yesterday about lifetime data retention. That's an important part of our proposition as well. Mm-hmm. And that's really where the focus needs to be right now, is creating the most robust, cleanest, and most complete data sets, and then we can do so much more with that into the future.
That's right on. Aurelie, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really like the whole creative tool that you're building, because I think that's one of the problems we have in the industry, is that you have a bunch of partners out there that will deliver performance, whether it's install or whatever, but they won't give you visibility on the creative. They won't give you visibility on the formats, where it was displayed, etc. And that's really making it a big black box. And I think now what's going on is we want more transparency, we want more control, we want to talk to the right person with the right message, etc. So these transparency is becoming vital. So it's very refreshing to see that it's progressing in making the industry a bit more mature.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree. All right, and our final question, we're going to have a little bit of fun, right? So you guys have to laugh, right? It's going to be funny. I'm prepping you, right? I know you're sleepy out a little bit late last night. So I am going to ask everybody to put on this wonderful fortune-telling hat. I was going to make a reference to Johnny Carson. Well, I guess I am making one. But a lot of the people around that said, I don't even know who Johnny Carson is. So this is a fortune-telling hat. I know. Fortune-telling hat.
You start.
I don't want to mess up your hair, but
Exactly.
My hair's over here.
All right. And I want all the panelists to make a prediction. Nice. Let's get some pictures of that.
There we go.
All right. So everybody gets to make a prediction of what do we think the evolution is going to be in the next 5 years.
Okay.
That looks great, by the way.
I'm channeling. I'm trying to get some inspiration.
You are good. Yeah. The prediction of what's going to happen in the marketing clouds over the next 5 years. And you can answer it really any direction you like to.
Okay. I think it's hard to be serious wearing this thing.
Now you can say anything.
Okay. Okay, I can't have a serious answer. I mean, I guess I'll say that mobile will eat the marketing world, which would be my prediction. We just saw this, and then I'll have to take this off. We saw this like over the last 10, 20 years, where the people who were running, digital, and they were way off of the fringes, are now, running the mainstream agencies, and they're, getting the CMO titles. And the same thing is going to happen with the people in this room. We were at Cannes, the three of us, and I'd say we were among the minority in Cannes that were the mobile-first companies. They was really dominated by the Googles and the digital marketers. But in 10 years, that's going to turn around, and what the people in this room know about location and real time and moments, everyone's going to want to know what you know. So I'm channeling David Ogilvy's message 30 years ago to direct response marketers is the same thing with the mobile marketers here, is that you guys will inherit the earth, and
Nice.
this conference will be as big as the Adobe conference 10 years from now.
Fantastic. Like that prediction. That's good. All right. Aurelie?
Yeah, I don't think I can give a name because I don't know whether that company exists yet or not.
Yeah.
I do agree that that company will have mobile at its heart, so mobile will be everything. And by mobile, I mean web and app. I think mixing these two platforms together and really having that single customer view, and then you can plug in the web. But I do believe that that company will have mobile at its core.
Interesting.
So, okay, what was the question again?
Well, you have to put on the hat. That's why you're struggling. Once you put on the hat,
It all comes.
you will be able to now make a prediction. There you go.
All right,
That looks really good on you, buddy.
excellent.
So we
take
want
it
you to make a
home.
prediction of what's going to play out in the next 5 years in the marketing stacks, in the marketing tech space, or in the marketing cloud arena.
I don't know, like Tesla's gonna become like the biggest marketing cloud?
That's good.
Man, it's hard to think under this stuff.
Yeah.
It's supposed to help.
Anyways, you guys will all do phenomenally great, build the next Oracle, size of a business.
Great.
Yeah, so look, I mean, to your point, on the media side, the world's already being ruled by the mobile-first companies, and we've seen this, playing out. So again, I wouldn't exclude, the big software and tech, giants that they're going to get fully disrupted. I think, these companies are quickly, catching up. But then there's also the kind of like the whole new wave of the AI, and I know it's a big buzzword and everyone's talking about it, but I do think that's gonna change the game, fundamentally in the way we've seen, Amazon walking into the space, like almost 10 years ago with kind of web services, and they, just changed, how small companies were able to really leverage that platform. So I think we're gonna see, those massive, projects on the AI opening up completely new possibilities, and I do think that's gonna be very different. Then the other thing is also, we're today obsessing with mobile, but I think we're gonna at some point move beyond mobile. I think these technologies that are coming up, that from augmented reality stuff to just everything else, like just the Internet of Things. It's at some point, these mobile devices won't be, the single most important screen. I think we're just going to see internet becoming much more kind of like it's just going to be like an air that we breathe across the board. So yeah, like a lot of changes. It would be hard for me to kind of like say, but AI, big deal, and I think we'll see some new interesting companies we are not, familiar with today becoming really large. So.
Yeah, I happen to agree with that. I think inherently the players today that we see, the big players in the cloud space today, who come from other areas not called mobile, will probably not organically be the winner.
Yeah.
They just won't be, because again, they'll invest what they know, they will do what they know, and we all humans do that to a certain extent, right? We're comfortable with what we know. I do believe that the future, or even if you wanted to like use a crossing the chasm, Jeffrey Moore reference, or maybe inside the tornado reference from that book, is at some point somebody does exit the craziness, the tornado, as the market share leader in the space. And there is one market share leader who is the winner. And there are a couple other people that hang around and make some money, but for the most part, there's a leader. And it is interesting. It will be interesting to see who that might be. But again, I don't think it's going to be the ones that we think of today, the big clouds that we see today, whether it be Salesforce or Adobe or Oracle. I do believe that it's going to be much larger than just mobile, right? And we talk about app. Here at Tune, we don't just talk mobile, we talk about app, rich app. We talk about web. We talk about cross-device. We talk about bringing together online and offline, especially as we get into your great point about e-commerce. That online, offline is extremely important. We talk about location services. That winning platform needs to start at the very beginning of the journey for that customer, right? Or, that journey for that prospect, I guess, is what it really is, right? Let's acquire. Right? And so at Tune, we do a great job of acquisition. But as I tell a lot of our customers and our partners, and this is a fun conversation, is that's fantastic. You got a bunch of new users on your app. That's great. That's day one. What are we going to do tomorrow to engage with them, right? To create a really high value relationship, and one that converts to whatever conversion means to us, right? So retail shopping cart is the obvious, easy kind of example. One that converts, and that relationship converts over and over, and we can measure the whole experience and provide the marketer some great data and encouragements, and maybe someday with AI, automatically will choose what media needs to be bought based upon what your outcome is at the point of that journey, or that micro moment, or that touch point through that whole journey. So the great news is we are in a great space. I would rather be here as well than in one of the bigger vendors, because we are innovating, right? So we want to thank each of you, whether you're customers or our partners or the Tune employees that are just innovating constantly. Let's keep that up, because this is an exciting place to be. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, and I got to wear that. He told me I would not wear it, so I'm wearing it.
To wear it.
All right, John, this is